Fireside Chats, talking to the real difference makers in the world. Now, here is your host, John.
Good night, I guess, to everyone out there. I am behind after the election in Virginia, which I never thought I would say, but I am saying so. For every lines, I'll play you a little something.
It's 11:15 free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Now I got a few words from some of our brothers in the zone. Chair is against the walls. The chair is involved. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. O'clock America, another day tree. Of you out of behind the lines, this is your song.
From the crappy remake, but the original Red Dawn movie. Tonight, I am joined by a sheriff out of Arkansas, who is taking a stand, and he takes his oath to his duty very, very seriously. His name is Sheriff Chris Brown. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm doing great, John. Thanks. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, I came across you by talking to a good friend of mine, Jordan Stein, who's the director of communications for Gun Owners of America. He said, yeah, you got to talk to this guy. He is a truly constitutional sheriff. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to talk to him. So I wanted to get you on my show, and that is what I did. So let's just jump right into it. From what I understand, I know there's something called red flag laws going around the country where it's basically taking away due process. It's like some pre-crime stuff out of like Minority Report, where they can go ahead and take away your firearms without any due process. And you said you're not going to obey those, or you're not going to enforce them. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You know, this is something you've seen, these red flag laws. They have them in 17 states across the country already. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, they basically on their face violate about 6 amendments to the Constitution, and they're just flagrantly unconstitutional. And you know, as the sheriff, as all law enforcement, but specifically as the sheriff, you know, we take an oath to uphold the Constitution first, and we're responsible and have to answer to the citizens of our county in that endeavor. And by that logic, something that is, like I said, flagrantly unconstitutional, like these red flag laws are, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think it's even something that's that outlandish. If it's that blatantly unconstitutional, we have a duty to defy it.
Why do you think that they're getting passed in all these different states?
You know, I think you see after we have one of these mass killings, I know the mass media likes to call them mass shootings, but I mean, you know, if a bunch of people go to the range and shoot, that's a mass shooting, right? I mean, there's a bunch of people there and they're shooting. So I think the more appropriate term here is mass killing. And every time you see one of these mass killings, there's this huge push for what they want to call or you know, say is common sense gun reforms. Well, every one of these common sense gun reforms they can show would have done nothing to prevent the shooting that happened or the killing that happened, and likely would do nothing to prevent the next mass killing. And so I think they're getting passed because this is they use the rhetoric over and over and over again. And you know, like my mom and dad always used to say, if you say a lie 5 times, you know, it doesn't become the truth, but certainly is or can be taken as the truth. The more times that you say it, you might even start to believe that it's the truth. And so we've heard this rhetoric for so long. I think people are just kind of tricked into believing that maybe they'll work, or maybe their hope is that they will work, because you know, we certainly don't want to see people killed. We certainly don't want to see people fall victim to these mass killings, and we'd like to think that there's something that we can do to stop it. I think there are some things we can do to stop it, but it's not not what these politicians and elected folks are calling common sense gun reforms.
How did you get into enforcement?
I got in. So this is something I've always wanted to do since the time I was 3. Being a police officer is the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. I liked the idea of being there in somebody's time of need, of being there when somebody needed help, being that person that they could look to and give them help. And so it's a long story, but my grandpa, my dad's stepdad, was a California highway patrolman. I had an uncle and an aunt that were both in law enforcement. And of course, I didn't find that out till a while later. I knew my grandpa was a policeman, but this is something that has kind of run through my family's blood a little bit, and it's just what I've always wanted to do. So I get to wake up every day and live my dream. And I guess they say if you do something you love, you don't ever have to work a day in your life. And so by that count, I've never had to work a day in my adult life.
A sheriff is also an elected official. What made you decide to run instead of just being like a sheriff's deputy or a police officer?
So I've worked several years as a police officer, as a deputy sheriff, in several different roles. I've worked in patrol, I've worked as a detective, I've run SWAT teams, I've done lots of different things, but the decision to run for sheriff was a little bit different than that, because as police officers, a lot of times we work hard, maybe to not have our identity really well known, or our family's identity really well known out in the public, kind of at large, and obviously being an elected official or being kind of an agency head like that, we're very public, and so there's a lot of differences, a lot of factors to kind of weigh there in this decision. What it came down to for us, and I say us because I think that the decision to run and holding this office is more than just me. It's me, it's my wife, it's my kids. This is something that we all do. We all serve, and the decision for us to run was really what we believe God wanted us to do. We spent a lot of time praying about it, a lot of time really seeking His will for our lives, and we want to serve where He wants us to serve, and we felt like in 2015 that He wanted us to run for the office of sheriff, and in 2016 He granted us that victory during the election over 3 different opponents, and has kept me here for another election as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You are also a big supporter of the Second Amendment, which hear the rhetoric saying, the Second Amendment has to be curtailed because of the safety to law enforcement. Would you agree with that, or would you totally reject that idea? I kind of know what you would say, but I'll ask it anyway.
I think it's crazy. I mean, I think if you tell police, hey, you're going to go into these people's houses against their will, who have done nothing wrong other than just being citizens and owning a firearm, and you're going to take their firearms by force or by threat of force, I think that places law enforcement in a much more dangerous situation than by having responsible, well-armed citizens there to stand guard with us and to help protect people and property alongside of us.
Yeah, you take your duty and your oath to the Constitution very, very seriously. Where does that respect for the Constitution come from? Is it something you developed over time, or something you grew up with, or?
I think, well, for me, I guess maybe it's something that was kind of placed in my life young. But then as I've come up, especially in law enforcement, where our first and primary job is to support and defend the Constitution, I think that's where a lot of this has come from over the past decade and a half now. I'm always amazed, I guess, to see how or to hear how many people get in this job or in this profession, or even just American citizens that have never read the Constitution. I mean, it was like a, what is it, a 6-page document if you print it out on paper, and how many people have never even read it? We call ourselves patriots. We call ourselves proud Americans, and
There you
and we say that we support the Constitution, that we defend the Constitution, that we die for this country, or that we'd sacrifice for this country like our founders did. But how many of us have actually read it? How many of us actually understand some of it? How many of us actually realize what it means to support it and defend it? That's I like to tell people that I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm all in for this country, and it was my wish that every American felt that way. I think some Americans feel that they show that differently, and I think we have some people that call themselves Americans that want to see, as a former president said, see this country fundamentally changed, and I think that's a dangerous thing.
Oh, I don't know who would have said that. I'm amazed. Like, they're not really even anything about the Constitution schools now. They're not teaching that of it. Intentional that they're leaving out like the text of the Constitution and what it means, or do you think the teachers are just or the school boards are just taking a shortcut now and teaching to like standardized testing?
It's hard to speculate on the intent. There's a lot of great men and women that work in our school systems all over this country. There's a lot of great patriots that work in schools all across this country and serve on school boards and in school administration. And so I think it would be hard to speculate, and say, well, look, education across the board is leaning this direction or that direction, or every teacher that teaches leans this direction or that direction. What I know is that when I went through high school, we didn't read the Constitution. We didn't learn a lot about civics. We learned some U.S. history, and they touched on some of this, but we were never required to read it. We were never required heavily to study it, or at least if we were, apparently I was unconscious during that time. I'm pretty sure I would have remembered going through it. And so, I don't know if it's an intentional push. I know that a lot of times it's easy, it's certainly easy to say that, a lot of the stuff that Marx wrote and a lot of other self-proclaimed socialists and communists have said, look, if you can take over the education system, you can slowly begin to transform people and transform minds and get them to embrace socialism. Of course, we know socialism is the train by which you get to communism, and so if you can get people to willingly accept socialism, take it in and embrace it and push it, which I'd say we've certainly seen. You got 9 presidential candidates. Well, I guess 8 now, so that's about 9 too many.
Now, so it's
there you go.
9.
But you've got all these presidential candidates that and some of which are just running openly as socialists. And who would have ever thought here in the United States of America that you'd have presidential candidates openly running on a socialist platform? At least to me, that says that educating people that socialism is a tool that works and a form of government that works. At least the education part of it is working.
Yeah, it's really funny that you can talk to people that are actually from socialist countries and none of them want to go back under socialism. But yet there's a lot of people in the country who are like, oh yeah, socialism will work. And everyone who lived, like my friend Gabby, who lived under socialism in Venezuela, is like, no, you do not want to go that route.
Yes.
It's not a fun time.
Well, it's the premise, and you hear, I don't know if they come out and say it verbatim, but it's the premise of, well, we know it hasn't worked in those countries, but they just didn't do it right. Well, it didn't work in those countries because it can't work. Socialism leads to communism every time, and communism destroys countries. We've seen it over and over and over again. And if you don't believe me, you don't have to take my word for it. You can, as Lamar Burton used to put it, you can read it in a book. I mean, there's plenty of history to support that communism does not work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the younger generations who didn't grow up during the Cold War and didn't see everything that was going on that that are for socialism. I've toured Eastern Europe that used to be ruled under socialism, and the scars of socialism are still all over the region. If you talk to anyone in like Poland or the Czech Republic or Slovakia or Lithuania or any of those countries, they'll tell you that there's no way in hell that they would want to go back under socialism, which is crazy. But let's get back to guns for a second. During the testimony in front of Congress recently, the sheriff of Charlottesville basically said that she would ban any gun that was capable of killing anyone, which is every gun. What is your opinion on that statement that she made, and opinion on a sheriff making that statement as well?
I think if I remember right, she was a chief, I think, of Charlottesville, right? Yeah. Cain killed Abel with a rock. It's not. We have to get past the idea of that it's okay to blame a tool for the actions of a person. I think I heard it best said not too long ago here, that when a cop shoots somebody, who do we blame for the shooting? We blame the cop. But when somebody else shoots somebody, we blame the gun. There's a double standard there. We have to get back to blaming the person and holding the person accountable for their actions instead of the tool. You could you look at several years back in China, they had a guy go on a killing spree with a knife and stabbed like 22 people inside of a building. And they say, well, look, gun control worked there because he didn't kill all 22. Well, there again, I mean, we're going back to the tool and saying, well, look, because he had a knife instead of a gun, he was only able to wound 22 people instead of kill 22 people. Well, that's not okay with me either. The person should be held accountable for the action instead of saying, well, look, we can just modify the tool that they have, and that's going to be better. And I'll say hi to Trey. I saw you just pop up on there. Hi, Trey. That's my local gun guy.
Yeah, he's told me. When I mentioned that I was going to have you on the show, I was like, yeah, in like a couple of weeks, Chris Brown's going to... Actually, you know what was I saying? I said something like we need more sheriffs like Chris Brown on one of my other shows. And Trey was out there, and Trey started going, that's my sheriff. That's my sheriff. He was very proud to know you.
Well, I'm proud to know him. He's fantastic.
He wanted everyone else to know that he knew who you were. Let me ask you this. I told you this a little bit earlier on today, but in my county in Virginia, it was basically taken over by the Democratic Party. The only office holder right now, besides some board members, which they're in the extreme minority. There's like two that are Republicans. That's not a Democrat, is the sheriff. So the day after the election, the chairman of the board and her cronies started pushing the idea of disbanding the sheriff's department and replacing it with a police department that would report directly to the board, and just eliminating the sheriff totally, which I'm not even sure how that is constitutional or how that would even work, but that's what they want to do. For right now, the sheriff is basically fighting for his department's life. And you said your wife has heard of other things happening like that. Why do you think that's happening? It is. It's just not in my county. It's all over the place.
Yeah. So her and I were talking about it just a little bit ago, and she said that she'd heard of kind of a similar push, and they use the guise of, well, look, this isn't the Wild West anymore, so we don't need sheriffs. Well, the thing is, when our government was set up, the founders put checks and balances into place everywhere to make sure that no one person or no one group ever held too much power, and that included all the way down to the local level. And by doing away with the sheriff, you do away with a check and a balance. A chief being appointed, if the chief doesn't act how the council or the board wants him or her to act, all I got to do is just fire him and replace him with another one. The sheriff is accountable only to the people that he serves or she serves, and really at the end of the day, the way this was designed is that the government that was delegated the power by the people would be as close to the people as possible, and that way the people would have as many controls and as many checks on the government as possible.
Yeah, I think it's because he's pro Second Amendment and they're not. And they're going to try to pass these. No, I'm serious. They're going to pass these red flag laws. Yeah. And he's like you. He's like, I'm not going to enforce any law that goes against the Constitution. So they're like, oh, we'll just eliminate your office then. And he has like a 90% approval rating, which is ridiculously high.
Yes.
Especially in a county that's mostly Democrats.
Right.
But they're going to take away his power and basically get rid of him. It's really scary, the times that we live in, and how we're moving away from a constitutional republic to uncharted territory. Yeah. Do you think that there's a way to reverse that?
Boy, that's the $1 million question, I think, isn't it? I mean, yes, I do. I think there's a way to go back, and the way to go back, I think, is well known by some, less liked by others, and quite frankly is not real difficult. Bible says that if God's people will humble themselves and they'll turn away from their sin and seek His face and pray, then will He hear their prayers and heal their land. This is an issue of America has long been a light in the world for God and for Christianity, and this is socialism is a spiritual attack on our country, and if we as Christians can't turn away from sin, if we can't do what we're supposed to and can't be good witnesses for God and follow His word, then our country will continue to slip away as it has been. Since the beginning of our country, there have always been people that have disagreed, even all the way back to the founders. You can look back through the first Constitutional Congress and or Constitutional Convention. You can look back through each one of the meetings and see that the founders, they didn't all agree on everything. They argued intensely. They argued a wide variety of opinions. And until we can get back to putting God at the center of everything and putting God at the head of our country, I think you're going to see us continue to go on this spiral. Benjamin Franklin, and I think I've got it right here. Benjamin Franklin, back when all that was set up, said it pretty well. And rather than try and paraphrase it, it's easier just to read it verbatim. So Benjamin Franklin said, "Have we now forgotten that powerful friend," talking about God, "or do we imagine we no longer need His assistance? I've lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without His notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without His aid?" And he goes on to say, "We've been assured, sir, in the sacred writings," talking about the Bible, "that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it." I think if we can get back to the point where where we put God at the front of this thing and look to Him to help rebuild our country, we can turn it around. With things that are impossible for men, the Bible says are not impossible for God. Certainly, we have a long way to go and a long way to turn back around. But to say that it's impossible is, I think, shows a lack of faith on our part.
Midnight Range wants to know, with all this come and take it talk going around, what are your thoughts? What are the thoughts that run through your head as a head of a law enforcement agency? Or he says head lawman.
I like that. I'm gonna start using that. I get a sign from my door that says head lawman. I like that. Here's the thing. When during my first campaign, we had a committee meeting where we were all asked to get up and answer questions from people who wanted to hear where each of us stood. There were 3 of us running on the Republican ticket, 1 on the Democrat ticket. The 3 Republicans were there in that particular meeting, and they asked us where we stood on the Second Amendment and where we stood if the government tried to infringe on those rights or decide to come in and take guns away from citizens. And my response then is the same response as it is now. If they come in, I'll stop them at the county line, and if they want to come further than that, if I have to choose between the federal government or even the state government for that fact, and the citizens of my county, I call them my citizens because they're the citizens I serve, not because they belong to me. I see it the other way around. I belong to them. But if I have to choose between the citizens in my county and them, I stand with my citizens. And so the come and take it talk, that's how it should be. We as free citizens, we as citizens of the United States of America should be well armed, well trained, well prepared, and obviously as a mechanism to defend ourselves and our family, but as an absolute last resort, as a mechanism to defend the freedom that was given to us by God and restricted of the government by the people when they wrote the Constitution.
Another question that I have, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one too. If the federal government passes some type of semi-automatic gun ban, would you enforce it in your county?
No, I don't think I would. I'd have to see the specifics of anything. It's hard to just say, well, look, here's an imaginary law. Would you do something with it? But like the assault weapons ban or something like that, no, we're not messing with people who own guns legally in my county or the county I serve. If they've got it, they've got it. I'm not concerned about it. As long as they're not out committing crimes with it, other crimes with it, no.
Yeah. Why do you think that there is a bad rap for semi-automatic rifles when rifles account for less than 500 deaths a year? Or like all sorts of rifles, just not ours, but all rifles.
The only thing that I can think of, the only reason they're gaining attention is because they look scary, and I think they focus. That statistic is all rifles, like you said, and I think the left focuses on the 2 rifles that they constantly mention, the AK-47 and the AR-15, and they constantly focus on those because they look scary. I don't know what other criteria they could actually have. If you look at these proposed assault weapons bans and like the past assault weapons ban, they ban features like a flash hider, a collapsible stock, a pistol grip. These are things that actually make the gun easier to handle. They make it safer. If it's easier to handle, it's safer. An adjustable stock is just that. It's adjustable, so it fits more people. But it looks scary, so it must not be good. I don't know why they focus on it, other than it's similar looking to the weapons that are issued to our military, and that it would be easier to use those, I guess, to fight back against a government that had become tyrannical than it would with single shot breakover shotgun.
Yeah, one of the things that they are proposing in Virginia, and one of the people are proposing in Virginia, is to ban any weapon as an assault weapon if it has a detachable magazine or a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds, which
Right.
is basically anything but revolver, or even like hunting rifles.
Yeah.
Or shotguns holding more than 7 shells.
Right. I think the ultimate push, and you've heard it. You've heard some of the of candidates and current politicians, prospective politicians, come out and say it. They'd like to see in Australia like ban or buyback program. I don't know how they can buy it back if the government didn't buy it in the first place. They can't buy it back. But they would like to see that. And this is a good step in that direction for them. I've kind of long said that the Republicans are really good at a lot of things, and the Democrats are really good at a lot of things. One thing that the Democrats are great at that the Republicans are playing the inches game. We as Republicans want to say, well, this is where we think we should be because this is what's right, and so anything short of that is not acceptable. It's here or it's none of it, and it's really hard to get to accomplish goals when we take that stance, even though this is where we want to be. But the Democrats, they say, well, we'll take this much, and then when you get used to that, we'll take this much, and then when you get used to that, we'll take this much, and over time they get to take that whole swath because we don't see it as nearly as big of a deal. It's like putting the frog in the water and then turning the water up little by little. The frog's going to jump out if it's boiling, but it's not if you turn it up little by little. They're great at playing an inches game, and that's what this is. If they can take detachable magazines, and if they can take shotguns that hold more than a certain number of rounds, then the next step is, well, you don't need a revolver now because that's concealable. And then the next thing is, well, you don't need a shotgun, a pump shotgun, or an automatic shotgun. Now you just need a breakover shotgun, and then from there, you don't need anything. And so we've got to wake up and realize that they're playing an inches game. They're very good at it, and we've got to just stop and say it's not acceptable.
Yeah, that is true. It also seems that they always use the same terminology. I can name it off the hand, like common sense gun laws and weapons of war, and military style rifles. Do you think they get the talking points from a specific organization or not?
I don't know. I don't know if it comes like maybe they have like DNC memos or something that go out to everybody and say, okay, well, we're going to call it this now, or it's every single one of them.
No, it's every time I've seen the memos.
Yeah, we need to FOI the memos, I guess, or something. But it is. You're right. I mean, if you look at it, it's every one of the politicians, it's every one of the presidential candidates, it's every media outlet. It's the same talking point, the same rhetoric, the same the same terms and phrases over and over and over again. And I think I go back to what I said earlier, which is if you say something long enough and strong enough, eventually it becomes perceived as the truth. And that's the only thing I can think is if they unite and decide on the same terminology and the same phraseology over and over again, maybe people will begin to believe it.
Yeah. I happen to know a guy named Dan who was the former president for the last 20 years of a little organization called the Brady Campaign and he basically said that's what it is. He actually left Brady because he got frustrated with their tactics and the dishonesty.
Yeah.
So he left, and now he took a couple of gun classes. He doesn't own any guns, but he's now pro Second Amendment. He's against stuff like universal background checks. He's not pro Second Amendment like I am or like you are. But he's against like banning like any type of like banning guns, like Pacific guns, because basically said that doesn't work, and it's true. And he's against universal background checks because he says that doesn't work.
Yep,
it's true. And he said that was one of the big contentions he had when he started coming out. When it's Brady when he started changing his opinion by saying, "Why are we focusing on this stuff? It's not effective. If we want to make changes, we need to look at changes that will actually work."
Yeah.
And he got a lot of pushback, and he was dealing with the Obama White House, and they said, and he told me that working behind the scene with the White House, that they were like, "Oh, yeah, we're proposing an assault weapons ban." But we don't think we'll get that, but we want to use that as a starting point so we can get universal background checks.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Why are we trying to get stuff that we know we're not going to work? It's dishonest."
Yeah.
And he basically left Brady, and now he spoke at a Second Amendment rally in D.C. Actually.
That's fantastic. And I think it goes back to the testament that education is king here. If we can take the time to sit down with people that disagree with us, realize that it's okay that they disagree with us. That's not a problem. And a lot of the trepidation or the anxiety over guns is just simply a lack of education. If we can take these people and be patient with them, diligent to work with them and teach them that a gun it's just simply a tool. It's just like any other tool. It's no better or no worse than the person who holds it. A gun in the hand of a good guy is a good thing, and a gun in the hand of a bad guy is a bad thing. And if we can begin to teach gun safety and good gun training and education, then just like Dan, we can change hearts and minds. It is it's one of those things that if you don't want them, you teach people they're bad things and they're not to be talked about, and then you do things like create safe spaces and kick people off of college campuses who disagree with anything that you have to say, and eventually you start down this road of you see a picture of a gun or you mention the word gun and you're an evil person and horrible and you just you want to murder people. Which obviously none of those things are true. So I think education is key here for us. That we, instead of just blowing up and walking away from people who disagree, that we take the time to sit down with them and show them, well, look, this is how guns work. This is why they're good. This is why that it's good for good people to carry guns. For people who are well trained, well armed. And that have good intentions and are good patriots. They'll help protect people. They help keep people safe, and we want that. That's what we want. I hear people reference this occasionally. I like saying it, but it's I carry a gun because a cop's too heavy. We can't carry cops around with us in our pockets all the time, and it's a lot faster to be your own first responder than to rely on the police to come pick the pieces up.
Yeah, talking to Dan Groff, that's his name. It was very interesting. I actually met him in person as well because I've actually bashed him a lot in my articles about like being, uninformed. And he's like, "Yeah, I was uninformed," which is kind of big of him to admit that, he was uninformed. But his thing is, he's like, there's too many people on that side that aren't uninformed, but they just have a fundamental hate of the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
And then they use that to exploit the ones that are uninformed. So how do we reach out to the people that are uninformed, though, and get them to actually look at it? Because a lot of them don't seem real willing to look at it.
Yeah, and you can't force them. I mean, you can't like grab them by their shoulders and sit them down and say, "Look, I'm going to teach you about this. I'm going to educate you, and you're going to listen." We obviously can't do that, but I think what we can do is every opportunity that presents itself, or every opportunity that we get to speak about guns in a positive manner, or to educate, or to take the time to help somebody on a range, invite them to a range and teach them to shoot. I think every opportunity we get to do that, we put a positive light on what this really is, and which is a means for sport, a means for fun, and a means for defense. And every opportunity that we take to do that, is a win. If we get flustered and blow up and walk away from every conversation, all we do is concrete in their minds that that guns are bad and that they don't need to talk to anybody about it because we don't have an argument, and we don't need to take that position on it.
Yeah. Getting back to your stance on red flag laws and not obeying unconstitutional laws, have you got any pushback from that from anyone for saying that you wouldn't enforce red flag laws?
I have not nearly as much as you'd think. Of course, I mean, we live in Arkansas. Arkansas, I think, has one of the highest gun ownership rates in the country, and so we are as a state a group of people that loves our guns and that loves people who stand up for the Constitution. So the pushback that I have had has been fairly minimal, and the support that I've had has been pretty large and outspoken, which has been very nice. And to the people who have been on the opposing side of that, my argument to them or my explanation to them is, look, I'm standing up on the Second Amendment right now because right now the Second Amendment is the one that has been under attack. But at the end of the day, I'll stand up just as hard for your First Amendment right, for your Fourth Amendment, for your Fifth Amendment, your Sixth Amendment, your Eighth. I mean, for every right that's laid out for you, the Constitution doesn't grant rights. We know that. We understand that. The Constitution does lay out a restriction on the government over what our rights are, and as elected officials or as law enforcement, it's our responsibility to uphold the Constitution. It doesn't say just uphold the Second Amendment or just uphold the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment. Our duty is to uphold the whole Constitution. And so that's been what I've tried to explain to them. Look, I'm publicly talking about this one right now, but I will fight just as hard for you to publicly disagree with me, publicly berate me, criticize, chastise, whatever you want. I'll fight just as hard for your right to do that as I will for our right to keep, maintain, and bear arms.
Yeah. That's one thing that I say. People always ask me why fight so hard for the Second Amendment, and my answer is it's not the Second Amendment. It's all constitutional rights. It's just the Second Amendment is the one that is the most under attack, but it's not the only one that's under attack. You see it with speech. You see, it seems like a lot of the people on the other side from us, I lean right, you lean right, they're for banning unpopular speech.
Yep. And
what I like to say to them is, we shouldn't ban unpopular speech, and their response was, I got in an argument with one of my friends from Canada about this, and their response was, well, if the majority of the people agree that it's bad to say, then you shouldn't be able to say it. And I'm like, well, then you wouldn't need a First Amendment. You might not need freedom of speech, because then why would you even need it? The First Amendment, the freedom of speech, is to protect unpopular speech.
Right.
And I might not personally agree with it, but I will fight for the right for you to speak your mind.
We shouldn't be afraid of being offended, and that's what a lot of this comes down to is the ability to offend and to be offended. You hit the nail on the head. The First Amendment is to protect unpopular speech. It's to be able to protect your right to speak out against the government or against other people. And we have to get past this idea that that speech is a horrible thing depending on who's saying it or how it's being said. Your rights are your rights up until the point that they bump into my rights. It is my right to say what I want, where I want, when I want, how I want, anything like that, just as it's your right to do the same exact thing. And we have to get back to being okay being offended. It's okay to be offended. I personally don't like it, and I think most other people don't like being offended either. But we should be okay with the idea that that it is your right to say something that might offend me, just as it is my right to say something that might offend you. It goes back to the idea that iron sharpeneth iron. The Bible says, "Iron sharpeneth iron, so one man sharpeneth another man." Friction is a good thing. If you only have one train of thought, only have one line of ideas, it's very hard to grow that way. It's through disagreement, through spirited debate, if you want to say it that way, that good ideas are forged, and that intelligence, can kind of win the day. And so we've got to get back to being okay with people saying things that we don't agree with, or that we just flat don't like.
So I take it you don't agree with the New York misgendering law, where we find if you use somebody's non-preferred pronoun?
No, yeah, I don't agree with that. I believe it's their right to be called whatever they want, but I believe it's my right to call them whatever I want.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to stand up in court.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It's new, so no one's really taken it to court yet, because no one's been charged with it yet. But the first person that gets charged with it, I'm pretty sure that's going to get thrown out.
Might guess there'll be some lawyers all over that volunteering to take it. Yeah.
Yeah. New York recently had a law where they got rid of it because it's going to the Supreme Court and they don't want to face the Supreme Court, where it was a transportation law, where if you owned a gun in New York, you weren't allowed to transport it outside the city. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the law.
Not directly familiar with it. I do remember hearing about it, and I do remember hearing that they went ahead and fixed it. But I think the court still agreed to go ahead and hear the arguments for it, right? They're taking it up still.
Yeah, they're going to hear the arguments next month, and they're going to roll with it at the lake in the spring. Basically, it said if you own a gun in New York City, you're not allowed to transport it anywhere but a range, and you're not allowed to take it out of the city, which violates all sorts of the constitutional rights and stuff like that. Yeah. So what New York tried to do is change the law, and then went to the Supreme Court, said, we got rid of it, so we don't have it anymore, so let's drop the case. And the Supreme Court wisely said no. My question to you is, if the Supreme Court said, all right, well, it's a moot point now, let's drop it, do you think they would have reintroduced it?
Absolutely. It's like one of my kids getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar and then saying, hey, look, I put the cookie back, so no harm, no foul. Well, you know as well as I do, as soon as I turn around, they're going to be back in the cookie jar reaching for another cookie. And this is no different. They got caught this time. And so if there's no slap on the hand, if there's no further action, there's nothing to stop them from going back and putting it back in place later. This is I think the court hearing this is going to be a good thing. It'll be kind of up there with the DC versus Heller case, and the more clarification we get on this, I think the more steps we can take to getting back to be able to actually exercise the rights as they were intended.
Yeah, I was hanging out with Heller last weekend. Dick Heller.
Mm-hmm.
He actually works for GOA now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that actually played into why they said no, we're going to hear it, because DC did the same thing 3 times.
Yeah.
Before they basically at the 4th time they said, all right, well, we're going to drop it, because they didn't want the decision to be affecting everywhere.
Right.
For that's why they are a shall issue. They're not a state, but a shall issue district. And I think the courts knew that they were played 3 times on that, so they're not going to allow anybody else to do that ever again. Yep.
Hopefully, that's right.
Yeah. What do you think? The Supreme Court has not heard a lot of cases, gun cases, since Heller. This is the first one they've heard since 2010. Why do you think they're so resistant to hearing Second Amendment cases?
I don't know. They're man, I don't know. It's hard to speculate on the I guess the intent or the uh, what's going through the minds of each of the justices there when they look at that. It's I guess my personal opinion on it is it's such a hot topic, and it's one that divides so many people so widely that it may just be easier to not hear cases and let each state kind of have their own way than to step in and hand down a lot of rulings on it. I don't know. It would be interesting to pick some of their brains and find out to see why or to hear why. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in myself because if Virginia does pass their assault weapons ban, I'm not going to obey it. I'm going to openly and willfully flaunt it. I don't think they will come after me because I'm connected to foreign organizations, and they know a lawsuit would be coming.
Right.
But why do you? But to the people who are also going to reject it, I know you can't tell them not to do it or to do it. To not comply. But let me ask it this way. I'm trying to ask in a way where it's not going to get you into the hot water. Diane Muller, who's a friend of mine, Diana Mahler, who is an awesome 3-gun shooter. She used to be a police officer in Tulsa. She actually knows Styx Larkin from Live PD.
Awesome.
She went.
Was she the one that testified before Congress here a little while back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I thought she did great. By the way, tell her I thought she did great.
Yeah, I'll definitely pass on that information. She said, I will not comply, and I'm going to follow her lead on that and not comply, which is a good thing. And I think a lot of people are going to do the same thing as I do when they start passing these laws in different places, like in New Jersey. Not a single magazine was turned in.
Mm-hmm.
And Connecticut, they're estimated to have 100,000 ARs in Connecticut. When they were asked to be registered, less than 5,000 were registered. What do you think the police departments who are now in charge of going out and getting these ARs and stuff, do you think that they really want to do it? Or do you think that's why they haven't done it? Because it's really, really dangerous, not only for the people they're coming to get the ARs from, but the people themselves.
I think you're probably split on that. I think I think you have some cops. Obviously, the chief of Charlottesville. You have cops that are anti-Second Amendment. You've got cops that are very pro-Second Amendment, and you've got cops that fall everywhere in between. I think you're going to have a lot of people who mistakenly think that we take an oath to uphold the law, which is incorrect. At least in our state, it is, and I think I'm speaking for the other 49 states as well. That we take an oath to uphold the Constitution, but I think you've got a lot of people that they just say, "Well, I just work here. I just do what I'm told." And they're going to do it. And I think you've got a lot of people that are starting to wake up and see that, hey, look, I've got a responsibility here to more than just the law. I've got a responsibility to each one of these citizens that I serve to do the right thing. And I think you're going to start to see even more of a divide, even in law enforcement. But you're going to see guys that see these things and turn and walk away from them and say, look, the law says you can't do this. I'm going this way. You go that way. And carry on. But I think you're also going to see some guys, some police officers that are sticklers about it too. At the end of the day, we're just people also, and so you're going to find a wide variety of opinions, even among us. Which, I don't like. I wish that every single one of us that took this oath was as serious about it as I am. I think if all of our elected officials, all of our law enforcement, our military was as serious about this as some of us are, maybe we wouldn't be in this spot right now.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Another question I have is a lot of people on the left, at least where I live at, they're kind of anti-police. I know several ones that I'm thinking about specifically, yet they want the police to go door to door and enforce red flag laws. As a officer of the law, does that piss you off a little bit? That these people who badmouth you in one breath, in the next breath they say, "Hey, go take that away from this other guy."
I think it's funny to hear the statement, that we can't trust the police, but the police are the only ones that need to carry guns. And you see this very hypocritical statement by people, especially by the left, but by a lot of these anti law enforcement people that like you're talking about. And I don't know if it's a belief that we're all just robots or something, or that we're not people who have ears and eyes, and or what. It does upset me or frustrate me a little bit. Police are the police are like life's referees. If I think it's a good analogy, and because we are life's referees, every decision we make is going to be disliked by somebody, and that's a hard place to be in. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of really good people who do this job. We're like every other profession. There are bad people that do this job too, and those of us that are in this for the right reasons and who want to do the right thing want the bad ones out just as bad as citizens want the bad ones out. We try the best we can to get rid of them when we can, and just hope and pray that down the line somebody is able to get the next bad one out and replace them with a good one. I don't know what to say to the people that like you're talking about, that are anti-police but also want us to go do their bidding. I hate it for them, but I think if they actually sat down and got to know some of us, their opinion might change.
Yeah, this lady, I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to give her any publicity. She don't like me, I don't like her. She argued against police in schools, like the school resource officers, because she says that would be a danger to the African American students. And then in another part of the discussion said that only police should have guns.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? You're talking about the same people you said earlier or a danger to African American students. Yeah, but yeah, police are getting bad raps. My father-in-law was a cop in New York City. My 7-year-old son, just adores police officers, and he wants to become a police officer. And so from that standpoint, especially from my father-in-law and my cousin, he was a DEA agent. He was undercover for many years in biker gangs, and now he's a sheriff out in Colorado because he had to leave the East Coast because of his undercover work.
Yeah.
Plus, he's a sheriff in a really small town, and that's the way he likes it because what he did for like 12 years of hard undercover work was really a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
And all that sacrifice that he made. And so it kind of pisses me off when people don't give the cops the respect that they deserve. I'm not saying that all cops are good because, of course, like you said, there are bad ones, and I can disagree with some of the bad ones out there. But there's the majority of the police officers out there are good ones.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's a backlash in the media where if you look at like TV shows or the news shows, they're always showing you the bad ones, or they're changing the story. And when the correct story comes out, like the Mike Brown thing,
Yeah.
where hands up, don't shoot was a total lie. But when that came out, that was a total lie. They really didn't make a big effort to put out the correct information.
Right.
Do you see that at all in Arkansas, or is Arkansas not like that? Where
we hear about some of that stuff occasionally, and that goes back to again, a lot of this is just a lack of education. There people take we live in this society where it's instant gratification. The first thing we see is automatically the truth, even if it's very clearly refuted later. And because of that, we hang on to that one shred of evidence, that first thing we hear, and run with it. And a lot of times that means we don't ever listen to any reason or fact later. I think you saw over 8 years of Obama's presidency, the police were just bashed constantly. It was the Trayvon Martin shooting. Obama said, "Look, if I had a son, that's what my son would have looked like." And I'm certainly not saying George Zimmerman was in the right over everything he did, but certainly Trayvon Martin wasn't either. And you can't just come out and say things before all the evidence comes out. And Ferguson and Michael Brown is a perfect example of that. Officer Wilson was cleared not only internally, which I know there's always skepticism about, internal investigations, but he was cleared internally. He was cleared externally by the prosecutor's office, then again by the federal government. But what happens is when we jump to conclusions, and when we say, well, look, hands up, don't shoot, and Officer Wilson assassinated Michael Brown, what you have now is Officer Wilson is no longer an officer, never will be again, and has had to go into hiding for fear of his safety. We have vilified police. You look at our media, our video games, our movies. We now, you've got video games like Grand Theft Auto where the goal is to kill police and kill other people. You've got movies that glorify dirty cops. You've got movies that glorify people going after and killing cops. Our media and our government for 8 years, and in some instances even longer than that, have vilified police to the point where it's cool to hate police, and it's okay to attack them if you don't like them.
Yeah. Do you wish that there was something that the people who hate the police could sign to say they would never call the police no matter what?
I think, some kind of I think it'd be fine. Yeah, they don't want to call us. They can maybe move to a country where the police don't respond or something, I guess.
Yeah. All right. I want to thank you for talking. We've been talking for about an hour now, and I like to keep it around an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on that. Where can people find more about you at?
So the easiest way is probably through Facebook. I've got a Facebook page that is facebook.com/CB for Sheriff, CBFOR SHERIFF, 1 R 2 Fs, CB for Sheriff. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Of course, our sheriff's office has a phone number and a website. Our sheriff's office website's cleburneso.org. And you can get a hold of me through there as well, via the phone number. Happy to be on, happy to talk with you, and happy to spread a message, a little education like we were talking about earlier. We want people to not be afraid of guns, to understand that they have a right, that they have an ability to exercise those rights, and that they should make their voice heard about it before we give them up.
Yeah, we definitely should. It seems like guns and police are both vilified now.
Yeah,
it's like for the first 250 years or 243 years of the country, Police are 40 years, I guess. We started about 3 years ago, maybe even longer than that. But for 200, let's say 240 years, that everyone liked police and everyone liked liked guns. Then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, they're like the Lord of the Ring,
Right.
where the ring makes you evil.
Right.
That's funny. Yeah, and people are saying that they've already hit the like button for your on your Facebook page.
Right on.
Right.
Well,
Kurt, go ahead.
We'll keep talking about this, and we'll keep pushing it, and we'll keep pushing hard, and every opportunity that I get to come out and talk about stuff like this, I'm going to take. We don't have, and we need more people who are willing to stand up and shout this from the mountaintops, and especially people in positions that kind of have a platform to use to do that. You look at Hollywood. Hollywood is constantly using their platform to push their agenda. The media does the same thing. And if we who are on the other side of this debate don't do that, if we continue to stay silent, we will continue to watch our country go the direction it's going.
One more thing. I saw a video of a sheriff in Texas. You'll find this funny. Sheriff's deputy in Texas. I guess they're sitting in their cars. And there was a guy open carrying a gun. Well, this lady who was apparently a tourist in Texas came up to the two officers and said, "Officer, there's a guy over there with a gun on his hip." and they looked at her and was like, "Okay." Like, and she goes, "Aren't you going to go investigate?" I'll send you the video. And they go, "Ma'am, this is Texas. We like our guns."
I love it. And that's how we feel about it here in Arkansas for the most part as well.
And she the Facebook, by the way.
What that?
Yeah, because she was videotaping the guy with the gun, and she goes to the cop with her phone rolling and thought she was going to be able to get some good footage of them going. And she posted it on Facebook, and she was like, "I can't believe these cops in Texas."
Actually doing the right thing. I mean, it's amazing. I know.
But they're like, "All right.
Yeah.
Did he threaten you with it?" No. They're like, "Oh, well, that's good because we're not going to do anything then."
Yep. It's great. It's great. It's, I wish more videos like that made it on there where people could see, hey, look, there are cops out there doing the right thing. There are people out there doing the right thing. It just so happens that doesn't make for good video footage. Only the controversial ones that get everybody fired up are what makes for good video footage.
Oh, one other thing I want to ask you about, because these people, I think, are hilarious videos to watch because they think that they know all the law, which they don't. Have you ever seen one of the sovereign citizen videos?
Oh yeah.
Or have you dealt with those guys?
I've been pretty fortunate not to deal with very many of them, but I have watched and enjoyed many of the videos.
Yeah, they have no idea what they're talking about.
No.
If you haven't seen sovereign citizen videos, go watch it. They are cringeworthy.
Yes.
These people don't have the vaguest idea. They don't have any idea of the law. They think that you have a right to drive a car around without any registration, license, or anything. If you say that you are not you're not a citizen of the United States, you're a citizen to your own, or
right.
something like that, then no laws apply to you.
Right. Yep. I'm a free citizen traveling on the roads, not driving. I mean, it's good. Yeah. You could spend hours going down that rabbit hole on YouTube, and it just, some of them get better and better and better.
Yeah. And most of the times they're uploaded themselves. I don't know. Yeah, thank you for watching, everyone out there. I know that the last comments couldn't come in because something's going on with the YouTube chat server. Everyone's unable to connect, and I know that. So stop sending me on other platforms telling me that. There's nothing I can do. I don't control YouTube. But thank you, Chris.
Absolutely, and thank you again very much. I appreciate it. And like I said, we've got to get out there and we got to make our voices heard.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to support my channel, you can go to patreon.com/John Crump or paypal.me/JohnCC. Check out all my cool gear at Black Swan Tactical, cool t-shirts and stuff like that. And also, we still have the 2A project going on. The 2A project, if you don't know, is we're going to buy a single mom a Canic gun. Actually, it's going to be donated from Century, but they're going to receive a Canic gun and training. And all they need to do is make a little video and go to 2aproject.com, enter the video link, and put their name in. You can be made by the mom or someone nominating the mom, and we will pick the most deserving mom and give her a gun. And in December, I think we're going to try to do an AR for a single dad.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's it. I will see you guys back tomorrow night with Liberty Doll on. She's a cool chick, and we should have fun. All right, thank you guys for watching. And are we back? Oh, we must be back. Someone just said, "Have a great night." All right, we're
Awesome.
back. But it show's over, so
There
sorry.
you go.
All right, bye.